Rambam. We continue with the laws of Yibbum vChalitzah, the Levirate laws. A woman married, lost her husband. Um, Childless. So she then becomes, to keep the family name, um, one of the brothers, the oldest brother that's remaining, to marry her, or to do chalitza. So Yibbum would be the marriage part, and the chalitza is to separate the two that have a connection. So there are brothers who are fit to perform either the rite of Yibbum or the rite of Chalitza. And there are brothers who are not fit to perform either the rite of Yibbum or Chalitza. Right? The deceased wives are under no obligation to them at all. They may marry another man. There are brothers who are fit. There are brothers who are fit to perform the rite of Chalitza, but not the rite of Yibbum. And there are brothers who are fit to perform the rite of Yibbum, but not the rite of Chalitza. So let's see. It's going to go in. With regard to the following, the deceased wives have no obligation at all, right, to Asaris Chama, is a, no, what's the English?
Who never displayed any male physical characteristics and who was sexually impotent.
Yeah, someone who's sexually impotent. And an androgynous, right? Androgynous.
Oh, that means
Yeah, but who has got male and female sexual organs, right? But they're not fit to father children, nor had they been at any time. Right? Because the whole point over here, what's the whole point? Her husband passed away childless, right? These are the brothers that are fit to perform the rite of Yibbum, but not the rite of Chalitza, a deaf mute. So they could do Yibbum, a mentally incompetent man and a minor. The rationale is that they lack mental competence to perform Chalitza. So it's interesting because marriage, right, is by being together physically. So someone who is deaf mute or mentally incompetent or a minor, they could, minor meaning 9-year-old and up, right? They could have relations and consummate a marriage, but they don't have the mental incompetence, and that's all you need for Yibbum. But for Chalitza, you need the mental competence to know what you're doing. You have to be aware, you have to make statements and so on, and they don't have the mental competency for that. When a deaf mute performs Yibbum, he may never divorce his Yavama. For by entering into relations with her, he establishes a marriage bond that's completely binding, and he's incapable of divorcing a woman by a completely effective manner. Because divorce also takes awareness, right? You need the awareness, and he doesn't have that. When the Yava was below the age of majority, but more than 9 years old, and one day performs Yibbum, he acquires Yavama as a wife. Right? He may not, however, divorce her until he attains the majority, as we've explained, because by majority, then he has into the intelligence. Sorry. As I repeat my spring allergies.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. All right. There are other brothers who are fit to perform the rite of Chalitza, but not the rite of Yibbum. Those status is in doubt. There's a doubt whether a Yavama is forbidden to the deceased brothers. So a man with crushed testicles or a crushed member, or he has been castrated in another way. So, elderly man whose virility has been weakened, right? And he is incapable, like ED, right? So, in other words, they can't father, so therefore they can't do Yibbum, but they have the mental capacity, so they can do Chalitzah, right? They can do the process of separating themselves from the woman, the widow. If a Yavam has been castrated and enters into relations with Yavama, he acquires her as a wife, for at the time, for there was a time that he was potent. Aha, he must, however, divorce her with a get because he is forbidden to marry the native born Jewess. Interesting. So, it's a category. In other words, someone who was castrated means at one point he was potent. Now he's not potent. But since he had the capacity at one point, so therefore having marital relations creates the union, but he has to give her a get. He has to divorce her because he wasn't allowed to do that. Interesting. A tumtum. A tumtum is someone who has. You can't tell their what their genitals are. You don't know if they're male or female because it's covered over. Should perform chalitza, but not Yibbum, because his status is one of doubt. If an operation was performed and it's revealed that he's a male, he may perform either chalitza or Yibbum as he desires. Right? Brothers of the deceased who are not in any of these categories listed above may perform either chalitza or Yibbum. Got it? Pretty simple so far.
But for Tumtum, wouldn't this person be classified? All right, it is assumed that the person is.
Sorry?
It is assumed that the person here is not a baby, but wouldn't the individual would have been generally thought of as one gender or the next?
No, remember, until they had the operation, you couldn't tell if he was male or female.
But in growing up, because
What?
In growing up, assuming that the person is, let's say, 10 years old.
Okay, so he didn't have an operation until, let's say he didn't have an operation until he was 20.
For a woman,
No, so I'm saying now, I've never, when does this, it's interesting, halacha, there's a lot about androgynous and timtum, right? And how many are there in the world? Not so many, right? Very, very, very few. But there is sometimes, right? So just like androgynous means both genitals, here it means you're not even certain of which one because it's there. It's somehow it's covered. I don't know the physicality of this. I don't know. I just know in halacha we speak about it, right? So it means it's covered over. You don't know, right? You that person doesn't know themselves by looking at themselves what they are. They need an operation to remove the that which is covering in order to be able to know. Again, we have to do some research on this to see when has this, how, this is very seldom does this occur. I'm sure it's not one in, well, whatever, I don't know. Actually, we should put it into AI. Okay, number 5. There are Yavamas who are fit to perform either the rite of Chalitza and the rite of Yibbum. There are Yavamas that are fit They are not fit. Sorry, to either the right of Yibbum and the right of Chalitzah. They are under no obligation to deceased brothers at all, and they may marry another man. There are Yivamas who are fit to perform the rite of Chalitzah, but not the rite of Yibbum. And the Yivamas that are fit to perform the rite of Yibbum. Second. Okay. These are the Yivamas who have the right to Yibbum, but not the right of Chalitzah. Deaf mute. Right? Now we're speaking about the woman now, right? Before we we're speaking about the man. Now we're speaking about the woman, the widow, right? Who was previously married to a man who passed away and they didn't have children. So who is the one who has the right? In other words, so Yivum could be done, but not Chalitza for her. A deaf mute, mentally incompetent, and a minor. The rationale they cannot perform Chalitza is that they lack the mental competence to read and to understand, as we mentioned previously. If the Yavam desires to divorce a deaf mute, or to get after he engages in relations with her, he may. He can do that. Right. These are the Yavamas who can perform the rite of Chalitza, but not the rite of Yibbum. In other words, they have the mental incompetence, but they don't have the physical. Let's see, a woman who is forbidden to Yavam because of a negative commandment, because of a rabbinic ordinance, Shniyos. In other words, this is called a second level. It's a rabbinic law of someone who's there's a relationship. I forget an example now. Maybe he'll say of a secondary like you can't marry your mother, right? That's a biblical law. There's also right you can't marry your mother-in-law, right? Let's say, for example, meaning even if your wife passed away, you can't marry your mother-in-law, right? So that's what we're talking about. Now, this is a second level that's only rabbinic, or because of positive commandments, as explained. Whenever, let's see if he gives an example here. Okay, you would have to look over there. Whenever there is a doubt whether or not a woman was divorced by the deceased, she should perform chalitza, not Yibbum. That's the violated prohibition. So sometimes there's doubts in things, so we don't know, did he divorce her or not? Now, and whatever the investigation didn't provide sufficient evidence, right? So, therefore, he can only do chalitza with her. He can't marry her, because if she's divorced, you're not allowed to marry your brother-in-law. Sorry, you're not allowed to do Yibbum. No, you're not. Sorry, not allowed to do Yibbum because she wasn't married to him. If she got divorced, then this whole law doesn't apply, right? If she's divorced. But now if she's divorced for sure, then that's not a question. The question though is, we're not certain about the divorce. There's some issue. Maybe, the get there's some issue with the get, the way it was written. And it's a doubt in halacha, right? That's the point over here. In halacha, there's a doubt. So now he passed away. What do we do? So only chalitza he could do. He can't do Yibbum because they might be divorced. For the brother's wife was divorced for as an erva. Okay. If, however, there is a doubt regarding whether the woman was consecrated to one's deceased brother, her status is like that of a Yavama, and she and she may perform Chalitzah or Yibbum, for there is no possibility of a prohibition being involved. Uh-huh. I'm not clear on that. Ah, okay, means like this. Let's say we don't know if he was really married. They were really married, right? Again, whatever, for whatever, how these things can happen. A lot of these laws didn't apply, but it's creating a parameter and a boundary and an understanding of the law. So what's happening? We're not certain if they're married, right? So he could do Yibbum. Why? Because if they are married, so then he was childless, and therefore he has, he can do Yibbum, right? And if she wasn't married, then the act of Yibbum, of being together, that's an act of marriage. So it's okay. You can do that. Similarly, the wife of the deaf mute, an elderly man and a woman who has become barren, are like other Yivumas. The Yivam may perform the Chalitzah or Yibbum as he desires. The Rashal is the elderly woman, and the woman who has become barren were once fit to bear children. Aha! Remember, they're in the category. It's about a category. It's not even about what is the reality now so much. That's so she's elderly or barren. She was once able to be, let's say, she was once able to have children. So therefore, you could do Yibbum or Chalitzah. Okay, I'm going to stop over here. Very fascinating stuff. Thank you, everybody. Wishing you a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Happy Shabbos.